Okay, this is a little bit of writing about something that I called the okay, not okay, okay experience in my practice. So for me, the experience goes something like this. The more I truly understand that I and the world are ultimately all right because everything is empty, okay, the more I'm able to see beyond my own self-centered views and be moved to address the suffering of others, because suffering is not okay. But the more I'm moved to help, the more I must practice to avoid reifying beings and attaching to the preferred outcome of my actions, since these things and everything else are empty, okay. So the experience keeps circling back on itself because it becomes clear that every aspect of it is an alternate expression of every other aspect. I think this is one way to talk about the fact that we can only really truly offer beneficial action for its own sake. We can't really act to help others because others and the idea that we can help them is ultimately a kind of fiction. And if we cling to a certain outcome of our action, we are just making the offering in the service of our own ideas and our own egos. Yet if we don't make the mistake, the so-called mistake of offering our practice to others, we lack compassion. And wisdom without compassion is not really wisdom at all. So we can never really pinpoint a motivation for beneficial action that holds up to the reality the Diamond Sutra teaches us. There's nothing to do but simply follow the path of an open heart and do it for its own sake. Just one other short piece here, if it's okay. Let me navigate this. So, offering beyond our limited vision, practicing with the hope that we benefit others is an essential part of our vow, of course. But I found that practicing with the hope to see that I benefit others is a trap. And that is another aspect of the compassion koan. So earlier I kind of brought up this subject of compassion being a koan because we can see it from many different aspects. In some ways it doesn't seem so compassionate to certain beings at certain times. It's natural for a human being to seek meaning in life by making an offering to others. When we settle down into our practice, we see the reality of our shared life. That everything from the air we breathe to the language we use to the food we eat is a gift. We see we couldn't survive without receiving the offerings of other things and beings. So we are naturally moved to give back and do our share in this vast web of interconnection. Yet if we don't continually return to our understanding that even our ability to make an offering is empty and itself a gift, we might end up making an offering in the service of ego rather in the service of vow.
Maybe we can pass this back and forth. Okay. So that was very interesting because that was one of the passages, thank you first, and that was the okay, not okay, okay, was one of the passages that I had underlined and wanted to ask you a little bit more about. The essay appears in the part of the book that's about beneficial action, right? Right? And I think your essay talks a little bit about what is beneficial action really, and especially in your experience there at Gyobutsuji. All right. So for those who do not know, why don't you introduce where you live?
Okay. I live in the woods of northwest Arkansas. I have a small practice place there where we do a monthly sesshin in our Sanshin lineage style.
So beneficial action there, it's not like somebody's coming up to your door knocking and asking you for alms, right? Right. It's more like birds bumping into your windows, right?
Right.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time alone there too. We have people that come, of course, to share the practice, but a lot of my time at Gyobutsuji has been alone. So I think being alone, this kind of connection to other human beings and the offering really started coming up for me because we want to see our connection, and we want to be connected to other human beings, and we start questioning possibly what offering we're really making. But yes, the community there is mainly been animals and birds, insects.
Right.
Yeah.
And Monty.
And Monty.
Right.
So
Monty is
my dog, who's been there 11 years now. A great companion.
And there's a great story in the essay about meeting Monty, right?
Right.
And having Monty run away and.
Right, yeah, because he just showed up as a 4-month-old puppy, and I had this idea that I couldn't have a dog there because it was another mouth to feed and barking during sashimi maybe, but long story short, he left. He came in. He just wandered in with a lady that was coming to check the place out for something, and he followed her car. She had met him as a stray on the road, and I said, "Oh, I can't keep this dog," In
the middle of nowhere.
Pardon me?
In the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of nowhere, and so he followed the car back out, and when he left, I just thought, "Wow, that was really an amazing dog. This was an amazing being. Maybe I should have reconsidered. Well, how is he going to survive? This dog out in the wilderness." And about 30 minutes later, he came back. He came running back to the monastery, and I thought, okay, this is some kind of a sign that he needs to stay here. And it actually turned out that I think he offered me way much more than I could have ever offered him. I kind of felt like at the time I was doing something nice for him. I was saving this, sentient being in some sense. But what he's offered to me in supporting my practice there and to people who come, I think is way more than I ever, could have imagined. So it kind of reminded me of some of the stories that Dogen Zenji brought up about, we receive so much benefit that's unexpected from our offerings when we, when we practice beneficial action.
Yeah. There was a specific quote that I'm going to read back to you. It's from an email. Yes, says Shōryū, I have quite an extensive community of beings helping me to practice at Gyobutsuji, even though I'm often the only member of our Sangha dwelling in the human realm. They are definitely always expounding dharma and teaching me how to study the self. So I think that's a really interesting thing you got going there.
Yes, thank you. I think it's absolutely true that everything there at Gyobutsuji is really a mirror for my own life and practice and my own heart and mind. And sometimes it's beings in the human realm, sometimes it's beings, in the animal realm, but it's absolutely always expounding dharma to me there, yeah.
Thank you for that. Oh, that's very good.
You're welcome.
Thank you. For you, Shōryū, as a Buddhist in Arkansas, how is it?
Well, there's not so many Buddhists in Arkansas, and there's, not so many living in rural areas, I think, for sure. So I don't have too many visitors. I don't have too many people, coming to practice with me, and I'm not sure how many people understand, what I'm trying to do there. And again, it's another way I think that my environment is kind of teaching me and showing me my own mind, because when I first moved to the area, I think I had a lot of kind of reservation about saying, here's the Buddhist monastery in the middle of rural Arkansas, put up a sign and say, here we are, because of some kind of, I should say I grew up in Central Texas, and I grew up in the South, and I have connected with, folks who I think may not be so welcoming to other, traditions that are different than their own. And there's a little bit of fear there that, well, maybe someday we were going to have, a cross burning in our front yard or something, but not to that extreme. But so I didn't really wear the samoe. It was part of the reasoning behind that. But it's just again showing me that it's really so much of this is just my own mind, and when you really connect with people in the present moment, we really go beyond all of these kinds of ideas about who we are and who others are. So, for example, my neighbor down the road, I don't think I had ever met him yet, but he's a farmer, and he's actually a cattle person, and he has a turkey poultry farm on the road that leads to Gyobutsuji. And so I noticed that every time, especially the first few years I was at Gyobutsuji, that I would have some kind of pain or even judgment about the turkey farm, seeing all of these animals in there living in a way that I thought was probably painful for them. And maybe some of that was going towards the person who was, having the farm, who had set the farm up. But one winter day, I had a person there at Gyobutsuji who needed to leave. Actually, it's a long story, but it started snowing during Sesshin, and back then I didn't have any real contact with the internet, or I didn't check to see what was happening with the weather, and this storm blew in unexpectedly. And by the time we realized he wasn't going to be able to get out of our drive, it was too late. We were snowed in, and I didn't even have a four-wheel drive vehicle at that time. And in fact, I think he tried to get out and fell and went off the side of the road, and so he was really stuck. And I didn't know what else to do but call my neighbor who has a tractor, the person who has the turkey farm. A mutual friend had kind of told us about each other, I think. And he came and pulled us out, and he pulled me out of the mud one time when I was stuck in another situation too. And I think about what an offering that was, and how much judgment there was some kind of judgment I had around him. But now every Christmas, for example, I go over to his house and bring Christmas cookies to him, he and his wife, and we always find something to talk about. And I think there's some kind of respect for us, that he has some understanding about what we're doing too. And so now I have been wearing samoe when I go into town, and I do get strange looks, but haven't gotten beat up yet or anything, so I think it's okay. I'm going to continue to practice that way.
So let me pick up on that. And so what have you learned about conveying Buddhism to the West? I mean, like what have you learned in your years at Gyobutsuji about?
Well, I think one of the main things would be is that I just have to be rooted in what I'm doing, and not try to look for outcomes. And also, I need to have help and support, or accept and receive, as Shōryū was saying, and ask for help when I need it. And that I'm pretty helpless on my own. That's one of the main things I've really learned.
That's good. That's nice.